Emotions have levels. Emotions can be felt to depths, sometimes beyond our perception. Emotions are rough. Sometimes they come in like a flood, sometimes they come in like a wave, sometimes they come in a drop. But sometimes that one drop has the ability to do something different. Sometimes one drop is all it takes. Sometimes one drop is all you have left. I mean, I guess it really depends on your level of emotional dehydration. Are you emotionally dehydrated? You might be. Symptoms of emotional dehydration include anger, irritability, sorrow, sadness, emotional instability. I think we already made that point clear. I can draw that line 100 more times, and if I keep drawing that line, eventually I'm going to have a fault line, and I will start going off on the faults, and that's not what we're doing here. We're not jumping off any cliffs. We're walking on solid ground. We are speaking to those who can speak to us back in very authentic ways, because the only way anything heals is if we are authentic, which means being yourself, handling things exactly the way you would handle them at the time, but adding that extra special ingredient, that one drop of emotion for everybody else. The one that says, you know what, maybe it's better that I don't fly off my rocker, because if I fly off my rocker, it's going to affect everybody else around me. It affects my family, it affects my friends, it affects my children, it affects my husband, it affects my wife, it affects my life in general. It affects all of that, but mostly it affects my inner peace, because eventually I'm going to have to deal with something that I did that affected everybody else. But what if what you had to deal with for what you did that affected everybody else was good? Nothing to deal with, right? No problem. No problem. No problem means no need to find a solution. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But here's the thing. You can always upgrade it. You can always upgrade. Like yesterday, you could be pissed off about politics, and today you could be like, dude, that's their problem. They wanted these positions. You know, these are their positions, and they will, people get what's coming to them, because all is fair in love and war. So if you started fighting with love, it'd all be fair. And it would be unfair to walk around and kill people. You weren't the one that created the weapon. You didn't create it. Your weapon is your mouth. And if you can communicate well enough with that, you don't have to do any damage. You don't. I mean, I am not going to say that a mouth cannot create emotional damage, because yes, it can. But it is up to the other person how the other person receives it. If the other person is at a level where they cannot receive what it is that you're giving, two things need to happen. One, you need to communicate differently. How can you communicate differently? How could they have communicated differently? I hear people talk about, what tools could you have used in your tool belt in order to do X, Y, and Z? And I think to myself, love, compassion, patience. But sometimes I'm impatient. Like, I've been admitted to the hospital and I'm not coming out for a while. Or I'm impatient. Like, I don't want to fucking wait. But how do you know which one you're at? Because these two things mean the same thing. They mean two different things, but it's the same words. Impatient. Impatient. Impatient? I'm patient? Are you impatient? Are you outpatient? I'm out some patience right now. Sometimes I get so frustrated with stuff, and then I watch people around me, like, put out that energy that I'm feeling in my head, and I sit there and I watch them and I say, oh, I had something to do with that, right? Because if I hadn't come in acting like I'd had a really bad day, because I had, but they didn't know that I had, so how would they have been able to gauge that situation? You got to be able to gauge it. And sometimes that takes stepping back, but sometimes that can take just walking into a room. Man, I have walked into some rooms where I knew I was not welcome. And I have walked out of those rooms feeling very different, you know? Like, I may feel like I'm